Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. So my name's Katie and today we're going to be doing a book talk for Rhythm of War, which is the fourth book in the Stormlight Archive, and this book just came out recently, so that's very exciting. And this book talk, I'm going to start with a non-spoilery section so you can watch it even if you haven't read it already, and then at the end I'm going to do a few like spoilery bits because I have so much to talk about and I just love it. Yeah, the Stormlight Archive is like my favourite series ever, and this installment just kind of reaffirmed that and just reaffirmed my love for these characters. And yeah, so if you're a fan of the Stormlight Archive, this is a really great installment. I loved it. It's quite different from the other books, so I'm not sure how much structure this video is going to have. It's just going to be me rambling. But yeah, so it's quite different from the other books in terms of the focus. So I would say a lot of the other books focus kind of on battles, and there'll be like lots of little battles and then there'll be a big build up to a like big battle, which is kind of standard for a lot of fantasy. But this one I feel like is quite different, and like the stakes are quite different. So in the synopsis it says it's an arms race, and that's very much what it is. It's like these two kind of opposing sides trying to like beat each other to discoveries, and that then has big kind of impacts on like the future of the war and the future of the world. So it's kind of taking a step back from like the action of the war and more focusing on like the kind of discoveries and the like implications that would have, and like discoveries about the world of Rashar. And I feel like you find out so much about kind of Rashar and like how it works and like how Stormlight works and just everything. And it is so, I love all the like information. So this book does really well at world building, I think, and I love the like sciencey kind of side of it, and there's like a lot of science. I would say it's like discovering things and like the kind of experiments, like following, and I find that so interesting. And there's also quite a bit of like kind of uncertain, uncertain goals almost. So like you don't know what a character is like trying to work towards, basically. Like characters all are very much out for themselves and they all have their own kind of agendas. We're following like 3 different clusters, which I think is what Sanderson has said. So I can't quite work out which is the 4 and which is the 3. There's definitely a 2, but I can't quite work out which is which. But yeah, so I would say 3 main clusters. One of the clusters I would say is definitely like the strongest of the book and the most interesting, and I was most engaged in that. And then the other 2, one of them is good, but it does feel like it's kind of a contained story that is really fun, but it does feel like important for future books, like setup. And then the final one is very much set up for book 5, but also that's kind of interesting, and it does lead to some really interesting stuff at the end. So I feel like in terms of pacing, this one is probably one of my favourites of the Stormlight Archive. So like I was so engaged throughout. It's like it feels like the easiest to read. I don't know if that's just because I'm so invested in the world and stuff, but there wasn't really any time where I felt like bored or anything. I was always like wanting to know more, whether it was like action sequences or whether it was more like you're hungry for knowledge basically. So yeah, there's like 5 different parts, and I think there isn't like a conventional like standard launch, but there is a really like intense sequence towards the end, and like the emotions are just like so it's kind of a bit like it's an intense ending, but I don't think it's the same kind of build up towards like a big battle. But you can kind of tell that throughout the book, like it's not leading towards a battle, it's kind of leading to something else, and that something else is just so good. I feel like this book is it goes in like, it's not an unexpected direction, but it's just kind of a fresh direction, which I really loved. And I don't think it really crosses into the realm of like science fiction, but it does have elements of that, and like the way the kind of stories, not structured, but like just some of the things do feel a little bit like science fiction-y. They just still very much feel like fantasy as well. In this book we're also following slightly different focus characters. So like the main 3, like Kaladin, Shallan. I always want to say Kaladin, Shallan and Adolin. So Kaladin, Shallan and Dalinar, I wouldn't say they were the main focus through of this book. Kaladin does get quite a lot of just Kaladin. Just Kaladin. Oh, I love him so much. I'll talk about him in the spoilery section, but yeah, oh, I just love Kaladin. And then I feel like Shallan and Adolin don't get as much time. Shallan gets a fair amount, but yeah, you don't. She goes like, there's quite a chunk of the book where she's not really in it, because I feel like the storylines, and I prefer this personally, like you follow a chunk of story for a time and then you kind of swap and like follow a chunk. But I feel like the other Stormlight books do that as well, so it's not anything different. But I definitely prefer that, because when it's just like chapter chop and change, I don't like that as much. I feel like you get a bit lost. And the Dalinar doesn't really have much in this book, so I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing for some people. I guess it depends on how much you like Dalinar. The bits he's in I did like, but I feel like he almost takes a backseat in this book, and I feel like that's quite a good thing, because he got so much time in Oathbringer that he almost just, you need a bit of time away from Dalinar to give the other characters a focus point. And we're following some like new characters, or well, they're not new characters, but they're characters that we haven't seen as much of, and it's so great getting to know them. And I think the series would get so boring if you just followed like the same characters the whole time. So yeah, we're following, like, there's quite a lot of Navani we're following, and also Venli. We're following quite a bit of her, and yeah, I just really enjoyed both their storylines so much. And then there's some like, there's a brand new character who just, I'll talk about her more like in the spoilery bit, but yeah. So like going back many points ago, so there's 3 different storylines, and they do feel quite separate. Like I would say it's most similar to the Way of Kings in terms of like story structure, because they don't exactly all come together. They do kind of fit together, but they don't, and like events in one will influence events in the other, but they don't quite like all like come together in a culmination. Yeah, and there is some really intriguing like setup for book 5, which I'm very excited for. Yeah. Oh, so this is the same thing with all the Stormlight books, but I always love the themes. So like there's so much like focus on mental health, which I love. And just the kind of like journey before destination. I feel like this book just like embodies that. Yeah, I just love it. The whole kind of like bonding with the Spren, and I just love that. And also I feel like in this book there's quite a focus on like parent and child relationships, which is really interesting. I like the kind of expectations and sort of the like what we do for our children versus like children trying to live up to their parents, and I just find that so fascinating. Yeah, I feel like if you want like more of my non-spoilery thoughts, you can watch my reading vlog, because that's completely non-spoilery. So now I'm just gonna go into like spoilery things, because yeah, so stop watching the video, because if you don't want spoilers, because I'm about to get all spoilery. So yeah, so I feel like the first things I want to start on, okay, the first thing, it's not entirely relevant to like Rhythm of War, but I was like, and I don't know if I was just being stupid and this is like already known, but say the leader of the Ghost Bloods, is it like Thakadar, is Kelsier? I knew that guy was up to no good. Like I feel like Kelsier is like slowly becoming the big villain of the Cosmere. But yeah, that was just so exciting. I was like screaming when I saw that, because it was like Lord of Scars, and then I was like, oh my god, is that Kelsier? And then like Wit says or something like, tell him I need to slap him, so that's like obviously, and then that was just so exciting. So yeah, that's just a little freak out moment out of the way. And then other freak out moment is when Taravangian stabs Odium with Nightblood. That's just like yeah, that was insane. That was just, and now I feel like he's been kind of released almost, because like before I think Race had like a lot of kind of restrictions on him, but I feel like the sense I was getting is now Taravangian can like, it has kind of the power of Odium, but more like not disinhibited, more like less restrictions, so he can like do more things. And I feel like it's going to be so interesting to see what Taravangian does with Odium's power, because so far his kind of intentions and like morals are very like, you're not really sure what he wants, and does he want what's best for Rashar, or is he going to get like involved in the kind of Cosmere politics? And it's very interesting, so I'm really interested to like see where that goes. And that's very exciting. And I also got really excited over this letter from Caesar to Hoyd. That was so exciting. Well, Harmony, I guess properly. Harmony to Hoyd. yeah, that was really exciting. So they're like my Cosmere freak out moments. And then also, of course, we have Zahale and his little story. And he's just like given up completely on like not, yeah, to Kaladin. But Kaladin. I love him so much. He's easily like my favourite character in all of fiction. I just love him so much. And his storyline in this one was just so precious. And when he like becomes, so I think at the start of part 1 he like decides that he's gonna go with his father to like try and go back to his training as a surgeon, because he's kind of like really battle worn and sort of has a lot of PTSD and stuff from battles, and he keeps like freezing up. So yeah, and then I was like, I was invested in that already, because I mean, I know a lot of people would probably want Kaladin to be this like badass warrior, but healer characters will always just be so special. So at that point I was already like, oh, Kaladin, you're gonna go and be a surgeon and like heal and recover, and just like medicine can be so healing, and I was just so happy with that. And then so chapter 25, that is because I wrote down the chapters that like made me cry. And then you realise he's gonna like become a kind of essentially a psychiatrist, and he's gonna help all these people like who are mentally ill and have been trapped in the like Ardentia, like these horrible like asylum things, and he's gonna help them and like lead them in becoming a kind of better people. And he's like essentially becoming Rashad's therapist, and having been through struggles himself, and it's just so like beautiful, and I just love that so much. And I feel like now, and at the end, when like now he's gonna have to go and like therapize the Herald to try and get him on their side in order to like train Dalinar to become a better bondsmith, and that just broke me. Like his whole arc in this book, just like learning and helping other people and helping himself, and like learning to get help, and at the end when he's like, I'm gonna go to these meetings because that's what because that's what Teft would have wanted, and that's just like so beautiful. And now I'm crying. I genuinely can't think about Kaladin without like bursting into tears. So I just love that. And then he does, like, if you're watching this and you haven't read it already, he does still get quite a lot of action. And so essentially, so the main 3 cluster would be Kaladin, Navani and Venli. I just love that whole storyline. So we'll go back to Kaladin in a sec, but I need a bit of setup for context. So they essentially, I love this, but like this trope is like my favourite thing. So like Kaladin and Navani are in the tower, Irithiru, and then like Venli and the other characters come and like take over the tower. So it's like this, it's not a siege, but like a hostile takeover of the tower, and all the like characters are trapped in the tower and they're like being occupied, and I just love that. And then there's like all these like, I don't know what it is, almost like guerrilla warfare, where there's like some characters that haven't been like captured, so like Kaladin and Lift, and they're like in the tower but no one knows where they are, and like the enemy hasn't got them yet. But then like Navani is there working with the enemy, and well, not working with, but like, yeah, kind of working with. We'll get to that in a sec. But yeah, and I just love that so much. And like Kaladin's like causing mayhem and mischief and trying to like rescue people and rescue Teft, and yeah, because so essentially Irithiru, like the powers of the Radiance get kind of shut down. So like all the Radiants except from Kaladin and Lift, I think, like collapse. So, and then they kind of get rounded up, but then like Kaladin goes ham and like stabs one of the Parshendi, or the singers, they're singers, he stabs one of the singers, and then like rescues Teft because Teft is unconscious, and then like goes and hides away and like cares for him. Yeah, and then Lift, that's also really interesting. So Lift isn't powered by Stormlight, she's powered by something called Lifelight, which is like Cultivation's light. And so I loved finding out about all the different lights. So there's like Odium's light, which is Void Light, Honor's light, which is Stormlight, and then Cultivation's light, which is Life Light, and then how you can like combine them and get the Rhythm of War. That was so exciting. Okay, we'll talk about that with Navani, but I'm still on Kaladin. So yeah, so Kaladin in the tower, and I just love that, like the whole action bits, and when he like comes in, and so the tower that we have the sibling, so that's like the kind of spren of the tower, and she's kind of under threat because the fused are trying to like corrupt her. So she has these 4 nodes which they're kind of protecting, and so Kaladin's like keeps, whenever they discover one of the nodes, Kaladin will like come out of the waterworks and like start fighting them and like protecting the nodes, and I just loved him. He's like so badass. And then he like, so like at the ending when he swears the 4th ideal, that is just one of my favourite scenes, and it reminded me so much of Show Yourself from Frozen, when he's like flying through the air and then all the lights like come on, and oops, and yeah, and then he saved Lirin because he like holds him, and yeah, I just love that, and his like realising that he was not going to be able to save everyone, and that also meant a lot to me because like it's going back to the healer thing. You do have to realise that you can't save everyone, and it's not your fault if they like don't survive. Like it's not, unless you like deliberately killed them. It's just something that happens in everyone, like it happens to everyone, and just yeah. And it's all seen before that with Tien and like and Dalinar, MVP moment for Dalinar, giving him just a little bit more time. And like sometimes, and I feel like that's really true of mental health, because sometimes it is just like time, and yeah, that was so beautiful, and yeah, but and then when Kaladin, and then Moash, and before I was like, I don't mind Moash that much, but now I really hate him because he kills Teft. And then and like that was sad when Teft died, but then Kaladin's reaction to Teft dying, just like that was heartbreaking. And there's the other chapter that made me cry, I think, is chapter 110, and that's like called Reborn. So in that chapter, Kaladin then like, so he's like having this breakdown over Teft dying, but then he like realizes that he can't, and he has to like and he can't save Teft, but he can save his father. So then he like becomes like, goes badass, and like I think that's when he swears the 4th ideal. And then at the same time, Navani's also bringing the sibling back to life, and that chapter's just so intense and so great. And when Navani's like says something to Moash like, you bastard, that was like, yes, Navani. This video is just turning into like me fangirling. I'm sorry if you came here for a cohesive review. That was at the beginning of the video. I just love everything about Kaladin's arc in this book, and just how kind of his like, how he realizes that he needs help, and he can help by helping others, and like all these people like needing therapy, and Kaladin being the therapist, and yeah, especially the like bit where in the next book he's essentially, all he's learned in this book is gonna then help them like win the war, and then Kaladin like swearing the 4th ideal, that was beautiful, and just him like helping in the tower, and just everything, I just loved it all. And yeah, just the direction he's going, I just loved it. Like, he's not just this light soldier, he has so much to him, and just so then next we have Navani, and Navani was a huge like focus character of this book, and I think she really had a chance to like shine on her own, because before she's been kind of almost attached to Dalinar, but in this book she's separated from him, and she's very much trying to like survive by herself in this tower, which has like been hostile with the enemy, and she's like making these discoveries, and she's trying to, so she's always felt like she's not a scholar, but she's kind of like, what's the word, not donated to, but like funded the arts of the scholars. But in this book she is very much like, and I think that's the thing about Navani, she's like, I think a lot of women feel like it's like they're not, almost like they're not their own person, they are what they are to everyone else. But in this book it was like Navani like discovering like her own merits, and she like is a great person. I just loved it, and just like realizing her own kind of agency and her own power, and like she's not just who she is to other people, she's like her own person, and that was just so great. And yeah, and her whole like relationship with the sibling was so interesting, and how the sibling is really interesting because she's very much like Navani is like at the start, like, she's like out to get, well, not out to get Navani, but like she's kind of very negative towards her because she thinks she's like, well, that she, as in the sibling, thinks Navani is torturing Spren by like creating the Fabrials. And so yeah, so then so just the whole thing, and then they have to slowly start to work together, and like Navani and the siblings slowly start trusting each other, and like, and how she's trying to save her from being corrupted, and oh, that's just so beautiful. And I just love Navani's arc and just all her like discoveries, and how she's trying to keep the discoveries like to herself when she makes discoveries, but then also, and just her kind of becoming this like unifying force between the like the singers and the humans. And I feel like that's also another big theme, like they kind of unify, and that's also reflected in like the tones and the singing, and and I think that's also true of both Kaladin and Venli. So I feel like the three mains are sort of, it's very much like a book of unifying and discovery, and like, yeah, I just love it so much. I feel like now, having like talking about it, I feel like Rhythm of War is my favourite. Like I'm having an existential crisis over my rankings of the stuff, like, okay. But yeah, so I can't even remember where I was at. So yeah, so Navani and the sibling, that was such a great thing. And when she like bonded the sibling and became a bondsmith, and that's so exciting. I mean, I feel like it was maybe semi-predictable that Navani would become a radiant, but also like the way it's done, I just loved it. And like now how she's a bondsmith and she's like her own like person, just mwah. And so, okay, and now we get to the best character, Raboniel. So, okay, so maybe she's technically the villain, but I love it. And she's another one who's really, really interesting, like in terms of morals and like what she's like intending. Yeah, like what her intentions are, because you think she's on the side of odium at first, but she's very much like her own character, and she has her own goals. And the ending, and watching her like slowly work together with Navani, and then like kind of getting over their differences to make these like discoveries, and you don't know what she's like, what her goals are, and but she's like, you get so, I just loved her. Like, I love villain characters, but she's not even really a villain. She's like, she's just got different kind of goals and aims. And there was one point when she was like, right, and now I'm gonna kill all the Knights Radiant, and that was like that was a bit like, oh no, Raboniel, what are you doing? But just the reason she like wanted to make the like discoveries, and I just thought that was so like, and like her daughter, that was heartbreaking when she like, yeah, when she has to kill her, and just so she can like get over, so like they're like the fused kind of have to be reborn, and then she gets like stabbed, and just to stop her from being reborn and like being in eternal like suffering, so she's like freeing her, and then at the end when she's kind of like been attacked by Moash, but she's really weak, but then Moash is about to attack Navani, and Raboniel like goes ham on Moash and like saves Navani, and that was Raboniel and Navani's like dynamic. I just loved so much, like the whole kind of, can I trust you? Are you my enemy? You weren't enemies, but we're gonna work together anyway. Like we have different goals, but can kind of align. And she's just so like evil and good, and yeah. So I just loved her so much, and her whole arc. And I'm so sad she died, but maybe she'll come back. But I doubt it, because she's like been killed with the void light thingy. Yeah, and the whole discovery. So like the kind of the lights thing, and like how you can like combine. So each kind of stormlight or void light or life light has like a tone to it, and how you can combine them and make new things. I found that so cool with the Rhythm of War, like how it's like a combination of stormlight and void light. I just thought that was great. And like life light's a combination of stormlight and life light. Yeah, not life light, the tower light, that's it. It's a combination of light and stormlight. Yeah, and just that whole thing is so cool, and like it's very much, I feel like the book is also like unifying in that sense, and now there's this like dagger that can like kill the fused and kill the radiance, and that's just really like juicy. And Venli, I loved her story. I feel like she's kind of just, there's a quote which is like, she's like stumbling along, and sometimes you can still stumble but you still get there in the end, and that's still like great. And I just feel like that's so like that just hit me. I'll try and find the actual like quote, but just that, and like it doesn't matter how fast you get there, but you just have to like be going in the right direction. And I feel like that quote just embodies Venli's whole arc, because you realise she's actually like, in the past, she's kind of the cause of a lot of things. Like, she is almost the reason behind like Gavilar getting assassinated, or she's the reason like Seth was there, and that's very interesting, like finding out about that. And when she's kind of like become this like monster almost, and now she's kind of seeking redemption for her past, and just her kind of, and her not really knowing what side she's on, because she's like, she's with the Fuse, but then she's also like wants the best for her people and the listeners, and but then also she's kind of like with Rlain, can't really say his name, and then working together. And when she kind of goes back into to help like in the tower when they're having like the battle between like the bad Fused and the good Fused and the humans, I think it's so good. And Leshwi, I love Leshwi, and her like whole story as well, like she's the Fused but she doesn't want the war, and like, and then how she's on the like, she's really with Venli, and how Venli's like secretly a Radiant, and I just love the whole thing. Yeah, this isn't a very objective review, and I've been on for like half an hour, oh dear. Just, and the whole thing with her mother, that was really heartbreaking. Like, her mother essentially is dementia, but then at the end when they like get reunited, that was like, oh, I just love the whole like reuniting, and like just the whole like mother and child thing, like I was saying, well, not mother, parent and child, because you have like Venli and her mother, Jack Slim, I think, yeah, their reunion at the end. Oh, and also, and I thought there was one moment when I thought that Timber was actually Eshonai's soul, and that was like, that didn't turn out to be true, but I was ready to like full on bawl if that was true, because that would have been like so emotional. And then also we have like Lirin and Kaladin, which I thought was such an interesting dynamic, and that definitely led to a few tears there, like relationship and the kind of whole living up to what your parents want you to do, but Kaladin's his own person, and yeah, just that whole thing was really good, well done. And then also Raboniel and her daughter, that was heartbreaking, but that was also really interesting, and like how that's her like main motivation, and yeah, just the power of that like relationship, and that kind of overshadows like Raboniel's like whole life, like her relationship to Odium and everything. And then also Adolin and Dalinar, so Adolin is trying to like, he's very much in the shadow of his father, and he's trying to like live up to his father's expectations, but then he just realizes that like he has to be his own person, and oh yeah, so that was a good transition into Adolin and Shallan and their whole arc. So I loved getting to know more about Shadesmar and all the different like Spren and stuff. That was so interesting, and I love their whole arc. I feel like Adolin's arc, so I think a lot of people wanted him to like go evil, but I didn't really want that, and I was so happy with where it went, and like how Maya's like slowly coming back to life because of like the power of friendship, and how we found out that the Spren of the Radiants like chose to break with them in the past and like become kind of Deadeyes. I thought it was so interesting, and yeah, I just loved that. And I feel like Adolin's not going to become a Radiant, but I just think the whole like being able to like bring Maya kind of back was just so great. And then Shallan was very interesting. She's kind of, yeah, her kind of past is like haunting her, and I thought it was so interesting the way that she'd like killed the Spren, and then that sort of led to all these problems with the honest Spren, and that was like really like a twisty web, and how Shallan had made Vale as like a protection for herself, I thought was really interesting. And yeah, and Patton, when I thought Patton was like full-blown evil at one point, and I got so excited, but then it turns out he's not really that evil. But I thought he was like, yeah, full-blown like evil. But yeah, no, I do love Patton, but I thought, and I loved how it was kind of a similar situation to the whole Tensoon and Orisa thing in Mistborn. So I was so like you think there's this spy, but then it actually turns out to be like someone really unexpected, which I thought was really interesting. But then it turns out I think Patton was just spying to Wit rather than Ray's, so I guess it wasn't really like. But yeah, but I got so excited when I thought Patton was evil. Yeah, is there anything else I want to say? Yeah, and then like Dalinar, Jasnar and Renarin, I feel like they're just kind of, that battle was more like set up for the 5th book, so you can kind of see where it's like going now, because like I feel like Dalinar is going to try and bring back the Oath Pact, and then Kaladin and Seth are going to be like going to Shinovar, which I think is going to be so cool. So that was my very completely chaotic review of The Rhythm of War, and I loved it so much. There were like 1 or 2 things that maybe I would have liked a bit more of or a bit less of, or I didn't even know, because I feel like, yeah, I feel like I just want more sapphic characters. That's it. Yeah, and I feel like you don't get so much of like the group dynamic between like Kaladin, Shallan and Adolin, because they're kind of separate for a lot of the book. But I did enjoy what you do get, and also it was nice to get like different, well, with Kaladin, like him interacting with like Navani, I thought was really interesting. And you don't get as much of Bridge 4. Bridge 4 is quite separated, so that's another thing. And then they're all starting to die now, which is yeah, that's sad. And yeah, Rock, I don't know what's happening with him. Interesting. But yeah, I don't know if he's not gonna like become a Spren or something. I don't know. Well, no, I feel like that's not gonna happen. I don't know. Yeah, he's just gone back to Hornita Peak, so yeah. But yeah, so I just love like finding out more about like the whole listeners and singers and Parshendi and Fused, and I just found that so fascinating. And like Lane and David, they were so precious. Like I just love the whole storyline of the tower, and that was just chef's kiss. So yeah, so I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a like and consider subscribing if you haven't already. And I hope you're all having a great day, and I will see you next time.